You're poor and alone, how sad. My husband's parents are worth $3 million, and guess what? All of it belongs to me now. Too bad for you, big brother. Sarah said those words with a smug grin, as if she'd won some great prize. She looked at me like I was nothing, like she pitied me. I just smiled faintly and said, "Congratulations." Then I walked away without another word. My name is Nick Jonas. I'm 34 years old. I work in accounting support at a small firm, spending most days buried in receipts, spreadsheets, and invoices. It's not glamorous, but I think the job suits me. I'm meticulous. I like things to line up, or at least I used to. You see, I was married once. My ex-wife's name was Chris. She was 1 year older than me, and we met in college at a tennis club. Chris had trained at a junior academy. I just picked up a racket for the first time that semester. Honestly, I was terrible at the sport. But Chris never looked down on me. She offered to coach me. She was kind, confident, and incredibly beautiful. Everyone liked her. She was the center of attention, the kind of woman people stared at across a room, and somehow she noticed me. We got close after a drinking party one evening. I was sitting with a few friends and upperclassmen. The atmosphere started out casual, but then one senior got pushy. "Come on, Nick, drink faster," he said, laughing while pouring more into my glass. I'd already had plenty. When I said I was done, he ignored me. "If you get drunk, I'll take care of you. My place isn't far." I felt trapped. Two of my friends looked worried, but no one said anything. Then, suddenly, Chris appeared. "Hey, Nick, want to get some fresh air?" She smiled, gently pulling me out of that situation. She bought me a bottle of water from a vending machine and sat beside me on a nearby bench. That was the first time I felt really seen. We started talking more after that. I found out she lived nearby. Her family was famous in the area. Big house, long driveway, luxury cars. But Chris never acted like it meant anything. "My house?" she said when I asked. "It's just a little big, that's all." We shared similar interests, laughed at the same movies, drank coffee at the same quiet cafe every weekend. Before long, we were dating, and soon after graduation, we got married. Everyone congratulated me like I'd won the lottery. "Nick, you're so lucky," my mom had said. "Chris is beautiful, rich too. I'm jealous." My friends were the same. "She's out of your league, man," they said with good-natured teasing. I smiled, but deep down I had doubts. Something didn't feel right. Chris and I moved into her family's home after the wedding, and that's when things started to unravel. Her mother, my new mother-in-law, was a nightmare. From the moment I arrived, she made it clear she didn't approve. "Chris, are you sure about this guy? He seems average." She didn't hide her disappointment. She questioned everything I did. Still, I wanted to make it work. I wanted to be worthy of Chris, so I worked hard. I woke up at 4 every morning to clean the house and prepare breakfast. After that, I helped at the family business with bookkeeping. Then I came home, cooked dinner, did the laundry, and cleaned again. Every day. Without fail. Chris noticed. She told her mother, "Nick is doing his best. He's my husband, and I love him." But her mom never gave me a chance. She just rolled her eyes and walked away. One Saturday, when I finally had a day off from the family company, I heard the doorbell ring. I opened the door, and there stood Sarah. Sarah is my younger sister, but I've never felt close to her. Ever since we were kids, she believed everything I had should belong to her. If I got a new toy, she cried until it was hers. A new bike? Same thing. She had this entitled streak that never went away. I never told her I got married. I even begged my parents not to mention it, but apparently the neighbors had loose lips. "I heard from someone down the street. Why didn't you tell me you got married?" she said, stepping right into the house like she owned the place. I followed her in and found her already chatting with Chris and my mother-in-law. "Hi, I'm Sarah, Nick's sister," she said cheerfully. My mother-in-law, who usually couldn't stand me, lit up. "What a lovely sister you have, Nick." Chris smiled and said, "Well, if she's your sister, she's part of the family." Sarah beamed. "Thank you. I'm working as a tax assistant right now. Just got started." As soon as she said that, my mother-in-law's expression changed. "A tax assistant? That's wonderful. We could use someone like you around here. Chris, don't you think Sarah is impressive?" Chris nodded, agreeing without hesitation. I stood there completely invisible. No one looked at me. No one cared what I thought. After that day, Sarah came by often. Too often. Every time she ignored me and talked only to Chris and my mother-in-law. She laughed, complimented them, and subtly hinted how nice it would have been if she had met Chris before I did. Chris didn't shut her down. In fact, Chris seemed to enjoy the attention. Then she started coming home late. She said she had to stay late at work, but I knew something was wrong. It wasn't the busy season, and Chris was never the kind to do overtime. So one night when she came back past 11, I quietly opened her bag. Inside was her planner. On multiple pages, I saw the same note over and over. 7 p.m., date with Sarah. I froze. My hands shook. When she stepped out of the bathroom, I held the planner open. "What is this?" I asked. Chris looked at me like she'd just been caught with her hand in the cookie jar. "Ah, so you found out." Then, as casually as someone talking about the weather, she said, "Yes, I've been seeing Sarah, and it's not just a fling. I think I'm serious about her, so I'm going to divorce you and marry her." I didn't even get a chance to respond before her mother came in. "It's for the best," she said coldly. "We need someone capable like Sarah to help run the business. You're just holding Chris back. We don't need you anymore." I stood there in disbelief. "I've done everything I could," I whispered. "Then leave," she said. "We want a divorce. Sign the papers and get out." I signed the papers that night, tears falling silently. I packed a small bag and left without a word. No severance, no savings, no dignity. After leaving that house, I had nowhere to go. I didn't have much money. Even though I'd worked for Chris's family business, I'd never been paid properly. Just the occasional bonus or gift card, nothing that could help me stand on my own. I couldn't go back to my parents' place either. Sarah was still living there, and I had no interest in seeing her face again. So I called a few college friends, people I hadn't spoken to in years, and thankfully, one of them offered their couch for a few nights. "Stay as long as you need," they said, and I did. I slept on that couch, staring at the ceiling at night, trying to make sense of how fast everything had unraveled. Chris, Sarah, my own mother-in-law turning on me like I was nothing. But instead of falling into self-pity, I forced myself to move, to act, to rebuild. Within a month, I found a small one-bedroom apartment. It wasn't much, but it was mine. A space where no one barked orders at me. A place I could actually breathe. I also landed a new job, admin work at a busy local firm. The hours were long, the pay wasn't amazing, but it kept me afloat. I was exhausted every day, but in a strange way, I felt alive again. For the first time in years, I was living for myself. Then, one night after working late, I was rushing to the train station when I saw someone I never wanted to see again. Sarah. She was standing under the streetlight in full designer clothes, holding a luxury handbag that I was sure Chris had bought her. She smiled like nothing had happened. "Nick, what a coincidence," she chirped. I tried to walk past her. I didn't want a scene, but she stepped into my path. "Poor and alone, huh?" Sad. Meanwhile, I'm living the dream. $3 million from Chris's family. All of it is mine now. You lost. She laughed. That high-pitched, irritating laugh she always had when she thought she'd won. I said nothing, just gave her a polite nod and kept walking. She shouted something behind me, but I didn't listen. What I wanted to say was this: enjoy it while it lasts. Because deep down, I knew something she didn't. That house, that family, it wasn't as golden as it looked. Months passed. I got better at my job. My confidence returned. I even studied for a professional qualification in my field, something I'd never had the chance to do before. It was difficult, but I pushed through. And then one evening I got a call. It was Sarah. I'd changed phones, but my contact block settings hadn't carried over. She must have found a way in. The phone rang over and over all day, from morning until night. I ignored it, but the calls wouldn't stop. Eventually, by accident, I answered. "Nick, finally, I need to talk to you." "No, don't call me again," I said. "We're done. I'll be blocking you now. Goodbye." And I hung up. I meant it. A few weeks later, I was at my vacation home. Yes, my vacation home. It was a surprise gift from my new partner. A peaceful place by the sea where I could get away from the stress of work and relax. He said, "Use it whenever you need to breathe." It was quiet, peaceful. A place where the sound of the waves replaced all the noise in my head. I was sipping coffee on the porch, enjoying the morning breeze, when the doorbell rang. That was strange. No one should know I was here. When I opened the door, my jaw dropped. It was Sarah. Sarah? What are you doing here?" She looked furious. "You blocked me. I had to hire a private investigator just to find this place." "A private investigator?" I stared at her in disbelief. "Why would you go that far?" "You lied!" she shouted, pointing a finger at me. "About what?" I asked calmly. "Chris's family. They're broke, aren't they? Their house might have cost $3 million once, but it's falling apart. The plumbing's broken, the wallpaper's peeling, the cars in the driveway, they don't even run." I tried not to laugh. She wasn't wrong. Chris's family was all show. The money had run dry years ago. The company her mom ran was buried in debt. Every time I mentioned it while we were married, I got shut down. "They're poor," I said finally, "and the company's basically a ticking time bomb." Sarah's face went pale. Her mother gave me all the company's paperwork. She said since I was a tax assistant, I should take over the finances. Me, I'm not even licensed. I tilted my head. "So that's why they treated you so nicely?" "Yes!" she screamed. "They dumped the company's collapse onto me. I didn't know how bad it was until I saw the financials. Millions in debt, no savings. All the banks have turned them down. Even selling the house wouldn't cover it." I nodded. "I told you, they're good at pretending." Sarah's voice broke. "They don't do anything. I'm the one working and cooking and trying to fix this mess. And Chris, she just sits there watching TV, pretending everything is fine." She looked at me, desperate. "Please, take Chris back. I don't want her anymore." I blinked. "Take her back? You loved her once, right?" "I did," I said, "but not anymore. I'm remarried. Happily. If you hired a detective, you already know that." Sarah's expression turned bitter. "So it's true. Your new husband runs his own firm, bought you this place. He must be rich. Give me something." She stamped her foot like a child. I stared at her. "You took everything from me once. Now you want more?" "I need help," she cried. "You should have thought of that before stabbing me in the back." I stepped inside and started to close the door. "Nick, wait!" "Goodbye, Sarah." I locked the door. She banged and screamed for a while, but I stayed calm. Then I called the police and had her escorted off the property. That was the last time I saw her, or so I thought. Just an aching heart and 1,000 questions. 6 months passed. I didn't hear from Sarah, Chris, or my ex-mother-in-law. It was peaceful, quiet. I worked hard, studied harder, and spent my evenings with my new husband, someone who treated me like a partner, not a servant. My new life was full. I'd finally passed the exam to become a licensed tax accountant. It was a huge milestone. That certification had taken everything I had to achieve, and I was proud of it. I started working at my husband's firm, where I was treated with respect and given room to grow. February and March were always packed because of tax season, but even during those stressful months, I had support, not scorn. And unlike before, I had someone who actually cared. My husband often said, "Once tax season's over, let's take a trip, just the two of us." The thought alone was enough to keep me going. I had traded chaos for calm, deception for honesty, loneliness for love. Then the messages started. First, an unknown number sent me a long paragraph. The tone was unmistakable. It was Sarah. She wrote, "Chris and Mom don't work. They lie around all day. I'm doing everything and I'm barely scraping by. I can't keep supporting them on my salary. Help me." A few days later, another number sent a message. It was Chris. "Nick, I've been thinking a lot. Maybe we rushed things. Maybe I made a mistake. I heard from Sarah that you're doing really well now. I'm struggling. Can we talk?" Then came one from my former mother-in-law. "Nick, I'm truly sorry for everything. I was so wrong. Life's been hard. We're all living in one tiny apartment now, barely affording food. Can't you help us just a little? We're still family, aren't we?" Family? They threw me out like garbage, took everything. And now they were begging? I didn't respond right away. Instead, I took a deep breath and reread every word, slowly. And I realized something. I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just relief. Relief that I wasn't in that mess anymore. I typed a single sentence and copied it into each reply. "I don't know you. Please don't contact me again." Then I blocked all their numbers and changed mine again, just in case. A few more months passed. One evening, my parents came to visit my new home for the first time. They'd finally cut ties with Sarah, too. At first, they tried to help her, sending money, offering advice, even letting her crash at their place for a while. But after Sarah started stealing from them and showing up uninvited at all hours, they drew the line. "She came by last week," Dad said, sipping tea. "She looked terrible." Mom nodded. 15 years older than her age, thin, hair all over the place, clothes wrinkled. She begged us for more money. We had to say no. They told me Sarah had been wandering with Chris and my ex-mother-in-law, knocking on doors, asking old friends for help, even trying to sell jewelry on the street. My father-in-law, who had always stayed quiet, had disappeared completely. Rumor had it he ran off to avoid being dragged into the debt crisis they were buried in. That old mansion they'd lived in? It had been put up for sale. I passed it recently. It had a giant foreclosure sign in front. Windows were boarded. The garden was overgrown. It was like a ghost house. I shivered. That could have been my life. That almost was my life. I still remembered the feeling of cleaning that giant house from 4 a.m. just to avoid my mother-in-law's complaints, doing laundry while they napped, cooking dinner while Chris ignored me, supporting the family company without even getting paid. That version of me was gone. He'd rebuilt himself. He had a license, a career, a partner who loved him, a home by the sea, and most importantly, peace. One afternoon, my husband came home early and found me on the porch of our vacation home, sipping tea, feet up, book in hand. "You look relaxed," he said, smiling. "I am," I replied. "Maybe for the first time in a long while." He kissed the top of my head. "I booked us a trip next month, Italy. You've earned it." I smiled wide. "You spoil me." He laughed. "Only because you deserve it." I thought about what Sarah had said that day at the station, about me being poor, alone, a loser. I thought about how hard she had fought to steal my life, and how, in the end, she'd been chasing a fantasy built on lies. Meanwhile, I had built something real, something strong, something she could never take away, because what I had now, no amount of money could buy. It came from truth and work and love. It came from knowing who I am, and who I'll never be again. Life continued to move forward quietly but steadily. The farther I walked from my past, the clearer I saw it. It wasn't just betrayal or heartbreak I had escaped. It was a life of pretending, of constant effort to please people who never saw my worth. Now I was surrounded by people who did. One morning, I was standing in the kitchen of our seaside vacation home, preparing coffee. My husband came in and wrapped his arms around me from behind. "Still want to go to Italy next month?" he asked, his voice soft. "Absolutely," I said. "I already booked the tickets," he replied with a grin. I turned around and hugged him tightly. Sometimes I still couldn't believe this was my life now. He worked hard, treated his team with respect, and always made time for me. I didn't have to prove anything to him. I didn't have to be anyone else. I could just be me. And that was enough. We spent that afternoon walking on the beach. The sky was clear. The waves were calm. It felt like peace was finally permanent. And then a few days later, I received a letter. Not a text, not an email. A handwritten letter in a crumpled envelope. It was from Chris. She wrote pages, full of apologies, regret, self-pity. She said she missed me. She said life had become unbearable. She mentioned the bankruptcy, the apartment, the fact that Sarah had finally moved out and blocked her. She begged for help, even just a little. I read every word, folded the paper neatly, and dropped it in the shredder. I didn't need closure anymore, because I had already found something better. Freedom. The last I heard, Sarah had taken off to another city. No one knew where she was. My parents said they hadn't seen her in almost a year. They weren't interested in finding out where she'd gone. Chris and my former mother-in-law, meanwhile, were still living together in a run-down apartment. Rumors said they were barely surviving, sometimes skipping meals, sometimes selling old things just to get by. It was hard to believe that not so long ago they had mocked me, told me I was a burden, laughed in my face, called me poor. I don't say this with joy, but with honesty. They got what they built. Nothing more, nothing less. They spent their lives wearing masks, faking wealth, faking success, faking love. And in the end, the truth always finds its way through. As for me, I'm not rich in the flashy way they pretended to be, but I have what matters. A real career, a loving husband, a home where I'm valued, and finally, the confidence to know I deserve it. I often think about who I used to be. The person scrubbing floors at 4 a.m, the person afraid to speak up, the person who thought suffering and silence meant strength. But now I know better. Strength is knowing when to walk away, when to rebuild, and when to never look back. On our trip to Italy, my husband and I stood at the edge of a cliffside town, watching the sunset over the Mediterranean. "You're quiet," he said gently. "I was just thinking," I replied. "About what?" "About how far I've come." He smiled. "You should be proud." "I am," I said. "More than I ever thought I could be." We stood there for a long while, hands intertwined, watching the sky change color. And in that moment, I knew I would never be that version of myself again. Because life didn't just give me a second chance, I took it, and I made it mine.